I was with him for just 1 year. See, we had our novitiate year in Detroit, and he was there at that time. That was I was there from 1955 in September 1st, more or less, until 1956, September 1st, when we made our first profession. So I lived with him during that time. But that was getting close to the end of his life because he died in 1957. I left there in 56 and he died the next year. And I didn't really have much contact with him in the sense that novitiate in those days was we were in our place and professed friars had their recreation and their meetings and so forth in some other room or some other place. So I just got to see him at meals. He was sitting at the other end of the refectory with the rest of the elderly friars, and we were at the other end, the novices. And there I really couldn't say anything about him in a special way. I just know that he was present there for the meals. And he was always there for prayer, and we had community prayer, and also not for the Mass, because he wasn't allowed to say offer Mass in public. So he would have a Mass off to the side. We would come down the corridor on the first floor. To the right would be the sacristy. And if you went into the sacristy and continued on, was the friary chapel. But to the other side of the corridor was a little chapel, private chapel, and that's where he offered Mass all the time. And we novices at times would assist him at the Mass. And he was getting along in years too, so we had to present the wine and the hosts and the water and so forth to him and kind of keep an eye on him to make sure that he didn't make some mistakes as he went along. So he would celebrate Mass privately in that little chapel each day. And at times, I don't think I ever attended them, but in the big friary church at Mount Elliott, he would have a service, I think, like every Wednesday maybe, a St. Anthony devotion that he had. So he wasn't allowed to preach publicly in a Mass, but I guess there at the St. Anthony devotion he would give some kind of little talk or meditation to the people. And of course in those times too, the elderly friars had their recreations alone, and then we had our recreation. And I can just recall maybe a few times that we had recreation was during the summer months. We were outside the kitchen area in the enclosure there, and he would come occasionally to be present with us, and sometimes he would have his violin, and you start playing his violin. He wasn't very good, but he always did the best he could, and he loved to do that, to play the violin. And we didn't really converse with him very much when he came out at those times. And sometimes I realized could notice that in the evening after supper, or before he came out sometimes to be with us for a time outside there for recreation. After supper, he would go to the chapel, and at night you would see him in the chapel kneeling in front of the Blessed Sacrament, the cross on top and the Blessed Sacrament, kneeling there in prayer. And then I think it was from there sometimes he would come outside and have a little time of recreation with us. And otherwise, I saw him in the corridors occasionally. One of the other times he was along in years, but you'd see him chasing down the stairs. He was on the second floor, and he ran. He didn't just walk down the stairs. He ran down the stairs, and I think it was that somebody called him. Somebody in the office was looking for him, so he wanted to get out there in a hurry. So he came down to see them. But some of the others that actually talked with him and worked with him and so forth, they knew him a lot better than I do. That was my first year as a novice and just 1 year that I was with him at Detroit.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
And of course, you know too that they would make trips, bus loads of trips sometimes from Huntington to Detroit to visit him. And I think when he was in Huntington, the bus loads of people sometimes would go to see him in Huntington.